Hello, yes, say good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Baldwin Sports Media NFL podcast coming to you at the end of week 4 of the 2024 NFL season. I will always have to slightly remind myself of what week it is because, again, as I believe I said last week, the games are just coming so thick and fast that it's hard to keep track sometimes. In fact, some of you may already sort of forget that this week is the London game. So they, have started to turn up earlier and earlier in the season. They were always sort of around Halloween time, at least, what I remember when it was only the one game. But now there's multiple, and it's sort of, even though I used to go to the games and used to cover the games, the fact that they come up so early in the season just throws me off a little bit. So I have to keep track of that. But that is in week 5. We are here to talk about week 4 and some of the headlines that have come out of it. But before we do that, I do need to do the admin for the show, which is as simple as saying thank you very much for joining me. And if you are a new listener, don't forget you can like and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to this on, whether it be, Spotify or YouTube or, again, wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget you can like and follow us on our various social medias as well. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, we are at Baldwin Sports Media. And on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. And as always, thank you very much for those of you who are returning and continuing to grow this thing as well. I see my subscribers ticking up across the various platforms, ticking up every sort of week. So there's new people coming, new people subscribing, new people enjoying. It is always great to see. Right, and with that being said, it's time to get into the topics for this week. And the first one, see, I've sort of gone back and forth over which I should go first, but I'll go with what was initially number 2. And that's because there's been some developments about it over the course of the day. And that is Davante Adams, the wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, appears to, at least according to reports, wants to be traded, and I don't really blame him. If you look at where the Las Vegas Raiders are, quarterback situation, not exactly ideal. They are likely going to finish 4th in their division, and for a wide receiver as talented as Davante Adams, who, for a couple of years could make the argument that he was the best wide receiver in the league. The wide receiver position, there was always that, Stephon Diggs could have given himself a shot. Justin Jefferson would have been in with that shout. Michael Thomas during his days with the Saints. There were a number of players who were in that discussion. Davante Adams was certainly one of them. I don't think he's quite in that bracket now. I think he'd be a very, very solid number one. I don't think he's a star number one in the way that, the other guys are. We know Justin Jefferson with the Vikings, Stephon Diggs, then of the Bills, now with the Texans, Tyreek Hill with the Miami Dolphins, so on and so forth. I don't put him in that bracket. I put him in the next tier below. So it'll either be a solid number one or a very, very good wide receiver number 2 for someone. Now, that is assuming that he's being able to be traded away. Because the news coming out this week is that, the past couple of hours rather, is that he has asked to be traded away from the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Las Vegas Raiders look as if they are willing to at least give it a go, with reports suggesting that they are going to be looking for at least a second round pick. I'm just trying to see if I can find the exact wordage. Here we go from Adam Schefter. ESPN sources: Raiders have informed other teams that they would consider, in quotation marks, trading wide receiver Davante Adams for a package that would include a second round pick and additional compensation. Now, that's what they're going to start asking for. Whether or not, when the options come about, it ends up being slightly less, maybe a third and a fourth, or a third and a player, or something along those lines, is yet to be sorted out, but that's what the starting offer is. And then the other factor that needs to be factored into all this, as is being pointed out by Albert Breer, he put out a tweet earlier that money will be key. Davante Adams is making 17.5 million this year. He's also under contract for 2025 and 26 for a total of 72.5 million, 36.25 million in each year. None of it is guaranteed. A trading team would likely want to rework those terms, before pointing out that Adams does turn 32 in December. But so that's the facts of the matter. It seems as if his time is coming to an end with the Las Vegas Raiders, at least, and now people are going to start looking for him. There are a couple of ways you can go about this. Obviously, the first thing you do is who are the star teams or teams that look as if they could make a run at a Super Bowl but are missing a wide receiver. The ones that come instantly to mind are the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't see them wanting to do business within their own division because, as well as hurting them this year, they may have already given up on this year. But if he sticks around with the Chiefs, then he's going to come back and hurt them for multiple years. So I don't see them, unless the Chiefs absolutely blow them away with their offer, I don't see that happening. I then look at the Washington Commanders, who have made a great start with Jaden Daniels as their quarterback, giving him a great weapon like that. I think will be a very good start. And then the other obvious one rather, would be the Pittsburgh Steelers, who spent all off season looking for that other wide receiver to go alongside George Pickens. If it meant Pickens moved back to his number 2 spot, or if it was a 1 and 1A, or if Pickens stayed at number 1 and you got a solid number 2. Either way, we all saw the talk with Ayuk. We know that Pittsburgh are still looking for another wide receiver. I think that is going to be the most obvious one. Now, whether or not a deal actually gets done and whether the salary cap can be impacted and so on and so forth, we'll have to wait and see. But I think those are the three main ones that are going to be coming up. Now, as I say, I think that he's going to be a very, very good addition for whoever comes along because you look at, as I said, what the Las Vegas Raiders now, what Davante Adams can bring, it's obviously not going to fit. So they need to keep rebuilding with Antonio Pierce as the head coach. I still have my doubts about him as a head coach, as it were. So giving him an extra couple of draft picks to make something work and the cap room as well to make some wiggle room there further down the line will all help. So I think it's a bit like I said with Brandon Ayuk over the course of the summer, that I think it's bridges have been burnt, and I don't think they're going to be able to get back from it. I want to say I want to be in the same situation again with Davante Adams, and just hope that I don't get burnt with it in the same way that I did. But that is the news that's come out today. Davante Adams asking for a trade, or at least hinting at a trade, and the Raiders seemingly okay with the concept, so long as they get back what they think is a fair price. Now, moving on to what was going to be the lead-off topic before the Davante Adams news sort of sprung up on us, and I want to sort of turn this into a bit of a discussion. This isn't really one headline. This is just sort of stoking the fires, if you will. And I think that's a good enough pun given what we are going to be talking about, because I want to talk about who is going to be on the hot seat at the end of the season. Now, I want to preface this with if they keep playing the way they do, because obviously teams can still turn around. But if the current levels of play and whatever carry out the way they are, I think that head coach X is going to be in trouble. And I've narrowed it down to 4 so far because I looked around the league. I didn't want to include the first year head coaches because whilst we have seen there are some owners who have that short fuse and think after 1 year that they're going to make that change. You look at the Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett. You look at what the Carolina Panthers did with Matt Rule. I know that was more than a year, but it was still a very short leash. So it can happen. But in this situation, I don't want to include them because I just don't think the other franchises around the league that they're being concerned with, I don't think they're going to be that bad. But anyway, so I've narrowed it down to 4 head coaches that I think we can start putting in on the hot seat territory. Now, if this is something that we have to wait till the end of the season to work out, so be it. If this is going to be one of those teams that, fires their head coach in mid-season, then again, so be it. I don't think any of them will be fired in mid-season, but I think these are the ones that, just keep an eye on them. So I've got Robert Saleh, head coach of the New York Jets, Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Eagles, Doug Peterson of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Mike McCarthy of the Dallas Cowboys. And I just want to walk through my scenarios for each of them. I believe I've touched on Robert Saleh in the past, so I'll make this one quick. But I think when you consider what he has been given and the work that he's been able to do, I think the defense is outstanding. We know that. But the fact that he now can't seem to make it work, or at least it's a little bit touchy, with Aaron Rodgers at their quarterback, the argument can be made. We gave you everything you needed. You've had the bad quarterback situation. Fine. We finally get you a good one, and you still can't make it work. Maybe just being a head coach isn't what you're meant to be. Again, move back to being a defensive coordinator. He seems to be very good at that, but you're just not head coach material. So I can see the Jets moving on from him. Nick Sirianni, again, only got them to a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, but the collapse from last season and the way things are starting to go now, if they can't get out of this rut that they are in, then I can definitely see them moving on from it. But starting the Great Reset. Now the Brandon Graham's still there, Lane Johnson still there, Fletcher Cox already gone, Jason Kelsey already gone. That core four of the Eagles offensive line and defensive line, as it were. Now that they're maybe moving on, maybe use that chance to reset the whole thing. So Nick Sirianni, I can definitely see going if they do not make any changes there. The next one, in also relation to the Eagles, obviously Doug Peterson, head coach of the Jaguars, formerly coach of the Eagles. Again, same sort of thing as Robert Saleh. We know what you can do. You've got this great, you're meant to be an offensive guru, an offensive mind, but the fact that you can't make Trevor Lawrence work, and you've seen the struggles that Trevor Lawrence has had, okay, maybe we're going to go another way with that. And then obviously Mike McCarthy, I think, with the Dallas Cowboys, with the expectations that are on them, if they keep playing the way they are playing, again, we've seen what they can do in the regular season with their back-to-back 13-3 finishes. We know what they can do, but if you are playing like this, I don't think they're going to be able to repeat that level of regular season success, which means we have to see whether or not, the Dallas Cowboys project is moving backwards. So, and after the Dak Prescott's got his new contract, maybe see if another head coach can take him, can make him take that next step and move another way. So that is who I think are the four main head coaches that are on the hot seat right now. And again, if they don't turn their season around, I think we are going to start looking at them at being, at being the main people to be fired at the end of the season. And with that, we move on to our third area. This isn't the third topic. Those of you who are regular listeners will know what comes next, but for those of you who are new, rather than go into a third topic in depth, as it were, I usually have this third segment and I break it down into a couple of stories and I just sort of whiz through as best I can, discussing each of them. So we shall start off with the Kansas City Chiefs and their injury concerns at wide receiver. Now, I obviously mentioned their injury situation earlier and how I would not put them in play for the Davante Adams trade. However, you never know if maybe there can be some wiggle room if there's, like in the NBA, a three-team trade, as it were. So Davante Adams goes to Team A, and then Team A maybe gives up another wide receiver in return. So, for the sake of argument, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but Davante Adams goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers decide we've got too many, so we're going to put Van Jefferson up for a trade. Again, not saying that's going to happen, but in this hypothetical scenario, I definitely see the Kansas City Chiefs being in market for a wide receiver because with Rasheed Rice looking as if he's going to be out for the season, with Marquise Brown looking as if he's going to be out for at least the regular season, and Isaiah Pacheco, I know he's a running back, but it's still a weapon and he can be used out wide. But he is on injury reserve, so he's going to be missing some time as well. And it does bring me to the conversation I think Nick Wright was having. Nick Wright, one of the more prominent Kansas City Chiefs fans in the US NFL sports media, as we're saying, if Patrick Mahomes can go and turn around what he's been given with with all those injuries, with Travis Kelce not 100% his best, that it puts the GOAT debate to bed if they go on and win their third Super Bowl in 3 years, do the three-peat, and Patrick Mahomes gets it fourth. It puts to bed the whole debate of who's the greatest quarterback of all time because he's been able to do it with this ragtag bunch of guys that he has at his disposal. The likes of, he rattled off Juju Smith-Schuster, who was cut by a bad team, the New England Patriots. Cole Harbin, who was cut by or not brought back by the New York Jets, who are a bad team, so on and so forth. And I do think there is an element of truth to that, if I'm being honest, because that was always sort of the talk with Tom Brady, was that he never really had that star wide receiver. He had Robert Gronkowski, who was great, but he never really had that star wide receiver in the way, he had Randy Moss for a year or two, but he didn't have his Jerry Rice at the wide receiver spot. If you want to, Terry Bradshaw had Lynn Swann and John Stallworth, who were both Hall of Famers. You've got Peyton Manning, who had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, all great, great in their own names. So with what Patrick Mahomes is likely to be facing this season, then if he and the Chiefs go on and win, then it makes him the greatest quarterback of all time. As I say, there is some truth to that, but I don't think it's going to be final. I think if he makes 5 Super Bowls, which I think is not totally out of the question, I don't think he necessarily has to match Brady's 7 to be considered the greatest of all time. If he keeps going on the projection he's on, which is, as everyone knows, his worst season is losing in overtime in the AFC Championship game. That's as bad a season as he's able to get. Whereas Tom Brady has gone one and done occasionally, didn't always make the conference finals and all that sort of stuff. So there is the element of Patrick Mahomes can consistently get to at least the AFC Championship game, that changes everything. So I don't think he needs all 7. And if he keeps going on like this, maybe if he does another year of it, then perhaps. But I don't want to concede the greatest of all time debate yet and officially crown it on Patrick Mahomes just yet, even if he does do that. But I still think that there's a little bit more work for Patrick Mahomes to do. But again, if he does, then good for him as someone who grew up hating Tom Brady and the Patriots teams. Then sure, go for it. It would be great to have that greatest of all time debate changed, but I'm just not in a position to do it just yet. Someone who could, though, if he continues on this projection, and especially if he's able to turn around a bad franchise, who could do this is Jaden Daniels, who seems to be having a great start to life in the NFL. I talked about last week how this was his coming out party, and then if you see what he's continued to do, it does look as if the Chicago Bears did make the mistake and fell for the generational talent rather than someone who was probably always going to be more pro ready in the NFL. And Ken Williams in Jaden Daniels, just absolutely incredible. And as I said, the fact that he's doing this with the Washington Commanders, not necessarily the greatest franchise over the past couple of years. Again, not dumpster fire level of the Panthers and Cardinals, but certainly a bad franchise. The fact he's able to get them to a respectable position, I think, is very, very good indeed. The fact that he's third in the NFL right now when it comes to quarterback rating, ahead of the likes of, the established Joe Burrow, ahead of Lamar Jackson, only trailing the likes of Sam Darnold and Josh Allen. I think that's a great place for him to be right now. Again, only his first year, there's still the element of, rookie showcase, and, once they've been able to get some proper tape on him, whether or not he goes through the sophomore slump. But as things stand, he's showing himself to be very, very capable when it comes to playing in the NFL level. So good for him. Continue to grow and continue to turn around that franchise and make that team a force again. Let's move on to let's see what we can do next. We'll go on to this Christian McCaffrey as well. Obviously, I believe I've talked about this on the podcast. I've definitely spoken about it on my TikTok. But there are going to be some very, very angry people when it comes to the Christian McCaffrey situation, because it has emerged that he has, I don't know how to pronounce this, but bilateral Achilles tendinitis, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, in both of his legs. Now, we always thought it was just going to be an Achilles with one foot. In the end, you look at the start of the season, he was questionable for the first game, so maybe he was going to be. But now the fact that this is what is coming up, I did sort of joke on Twitter as well that I think there are going to be some people who might be who should sue the 49ers. Or no, everyone who picked Christian McCaffrey number 1 in fantasy should have the right to sue the San Francisco 49ers for something very small. I think I said just a loaf of sourdough bread from a San Francisco bakery. I think that's all that they should be able to get. But this whole situation is, I fear it's going to get worse before it gets better. And again, the fact that the 49ers sort of must have known something about this, and now for it to be this bad, maybe something that affects him the rest of his career, as it were. Now, to go from questionable at the very start to what he has now, very, very alarming indeed. And I don't think we're going to hear the end of it. If Christian McCaffrey comes back and plays in the regular season, I'm going to be very, very shocked indeed. Just whenever you go to see experts at a point, you know it's a really, really big problem. To get this situation now, I think is slightly alarming. So something very much to keep an eye on after the latest update. We'll move on to Justin Fields. Next, as I usually like to segue Steelers section in here wherever I can, and I'm in my notes, I just put it in. Did Justin Fields announce himself as the starter? So let's look into that, shall we? Because in the first couple of weeks, the argument could be made that Justin Fields was just being a game manager, wasn't throwing all that often, 156 yards in the first game, 117 in the second game, led the defense win the game whilst he gets himself acclimatized, so on and so forth. Now, though, in the past two games, in the win against the Chargers, he threw for 245 yards and a touchdown and an interception as well, but that was somewhat random in a sense. Now, though, against the Colts, now, whilst he did lose, we know that, but the performance he gave made you think that, okay, he has, as we said, announced himself as the starter. 64.7 completion rate, 312 yards, one touchdown, two rushing touchdowns, his highest quarterback rating of the season. There were some little errors in there, the snap that pretty much killed the game. I'm not going to get too big on that because we've seen experienced centers and quarterbacks make that mistake. Crikey, Marquise Pouncey and Ben Roethlisberger, who've been playing together for what, 9, 10 years? They made that same mistake in the on the first game of a playoff game against the Browns. Peyton Manning had it happen to in the first play of a Super Bowl. So I'm not going to get overly thinking about that, especially as Zach Frazier has taken the blame for that as well. But the fact that, and this was a point that many people made on Twitter during the game, is okay, now that he's in a hole, now we have to see Justin Fields win a game. He can't be a game manager. He has to do something special. And he did something special. Now, again, he didn't win, but if he'd have won, I think I think the debate stays the same. Russell Wilson is looking as if he's going to be coming back sooner rather than later. His practice workload is going to be upped in the next couple of days, but it is looking as if Justin Fields will be starting this Sunday against the Cowboys. But I think based on the performance against the Indianapolis Colts, I don't think there's any real turning back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Justin Fields is now the starter. Russell Wilson is the backup, and I think he's just going to have to accept that. And until Justin Fields plays bad, then he's going to have to sit on the bench and, hold the clipboard, as it were. And, as I've said before, I don't think you should lose your spot because of injury. But when this is the situation that's coming out as a result of it, you don't really have a choice. It's like the San Francisco 49ers when Jimmy Garoppolo came back healthy after his injury. No, we've got Brock Purdy. He's doing very, very well. We're going to stick with him. I think it's going to be the same with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, we know what happened with Russell Wilson, but look what Justin Fields is doing. This is what the Bears thought they were getting when they drafted him. So we're just going to move on and stick with him. Again, it's harsh to say that, but I think that's just the reality of it. And with that, we move on to our final topic of the week, which is I always try to take it at least away from the sport of football. I know I've sort of dabbled in college football in the past couple of weeks, but this one I am sticking away from football and moving to the baseball world. And again, just one of the fun stories that I saw this week was in the final game of the season. In baseball, everything's always a little bit strange at the end of the year because that's when players make their final bow. They get the ceremonial, walking off the field. If they're a pitcher, they get taken out of the game, and everyone gets to give them one last round of applause. We saw for the Colorado Rockies, Charlie Blackmon in his final game got to run out onto the field on his own to get the applause from the fans, everything like that. So it's always a chance for the weird, the wonderful, and the very nice things to happen. And this story is sort of all of them wrapped up in one. And this was Ian Happ, for the Chicago Cubs. Final game of the season. What did he do? He decided to buy the fans in the Wrigley Field bleachers drinks. I think that's fantastic. For those of you who didn't see how it happened, basically he had a baseball and he taped. Just look at the photo here. What looks like $200. That could just be what was left after someone took the photo, but he sent up hundreds, plural, of dollars for the fans in the bleachers to go and get drinks on him. Effectively, very, very, very kind. Although, given ballpark prices, we don't know how many he was actually able to get, how much that only bought, could have been 10 for all we know, but it's still very, very nice. So, just a very, very nice story of Ian Happ for the Chicago Cubs, giving fans what they want, drinks on him. Absolutely perfect. Great story all round. And what a great way to, I don't know, for the Bears fans to, why do I keep saying the, well, I'm sure there are a bunch of them who are Bears fans as well, Cubs fans, to end the season. And a great way for me to end this episode of the podcast. Thank you very much, as always, for joining. As I said at the top, if you are new, don't forget you can like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. And don't forget to reach out to us on our social medias at Baldwin Sports Media on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. So don't forget to give that a like and a follow wherever you can. And don't forget to interact there as well. And for those of you who are returning, once again, thank you very much for your patronage. It is much appreciated. Don't forget to share around your friends to keep the word of mouth being spread and keep this podcast growing. So until next time, at the end of week 5, again, at the start, I had to remind myself what week's coming up. But until next week, what will be week 5, stay safe, especially if you are, that's probably something I should say, if you are listening to this in the sort of southeastern United States and the East, stay safe, and hopefully whatever damage is done is minimal, and everything, you and your family, you and yours are all safe. And until next time, as I say, stay safe, and until next time, take care.